So the What is Publishing group number 1, please.
All right. Awesome. So I'm Vivian Siegel from the Global Biological Standards Institute, and I've got the honor of representing What is Publishing Group 1 and speaking on behalf of this group. And the other members are?
Matthew Spitzer from the Center for Open Science.
Jamie Vernon, editor, American Scientist.
Anne Gabriel, Academic and Research Relations, Elsevier.
Rick Mulligan, Program Officer for Scholarly Publishing at the Association of Research Libraries.
James Butcher, Publishing Director for the Nature Journals.
Kathleen Fitzpatrick, Director of Scholarly Communication, Modern Language Association.
And if I could have that, I'm actually going to get out. And there are a couple of people who had to leave before this presentation. One just left, actually. So we are What is Publishing 1, also known as the Metaphor Happy Group. You'll see at least 3, if not 4 metaphors thrown at you during the course of this presentation. So if we could, do I have this? Okay. So we have on this first slide publishing as a black box, a stable structure. We just heard another What is Publishing thing we too thought about. Is that really what publishing is? And when we started our discussions, we really wanted to talk about, like, what is the motivation for thinking about changing publishing in the first place? And for us, it was really about thinking about how we could provide the greatest benefit, or ever greater benefits, of the scholarly enterprise to a global society in a sustainable way. And we'll return to that question towards the end of this presentation when we think about ways we might change publishing to improve this, this kind of metric. So instead of saying what publishing is, we're starting to talk about what publishing can become. And as we showed you yesterday, about 30 years ago, the prediction was made from the former editor of The Lancet, once editor of The Lancet, that a day will come when journals will be superseded as a means of publishing new research. We're not quite at, I think we are at kind of a tipping point here where that really can happen. And so with that in mind, we really wanted to think about what's the problem that we have here that we're trying to solve, and what might a new definition of publishing be that opens up the potential for transformative change. And so, as you just heard in the last presentation, we tend to think of publishing as of a version of record, a concrete, mechanistic, monolithic process with a shared infrastructure and definitive boundaries. And that's really very much what we have today, and publishing, with the great disruptor of the internet, hasn't really changed very much. So one of the things we talked about a lot are there other disruptors out there that we could think about that actually do have the potential that we can capture to actually create change for that greater good end that we're thinking about. So as we talked about yesterday, our academic publishing models, although there has been a lot of innovation around the edges by publishers and others, has remained largely unchanged, as you just heard. And are we okay with that? So we weren't, in some sense, we were and we weren't okay at that pace. I would say there was some contention in the group, and it's interesting that we managed to get to a presentation that we're all happy with. So we want to actually blow open that black box a little bit, look inside, see what we might be able to do that actually makes publishing do what we're hoping publishing can do. And so we offer up a kind of another definition of what we might consider publishing, or what publishing can be. And so we said it's a process, and we've heard about the publishing process just now, that creates or maybe captures and makes discoverable artifacts of knowledge in order to facilitate the use and reuse of scholarship on a global scale. It's an enabler so that research communities can build upon the work of others and provides a venue for evolving discourse. So here we started thinking about metaphors again. I first presented a black box, and when we started thinking about this as a process, and we thought about scholarship, and I'll go back for a minute, we talked about artifacts of knowledge, and so we're saying it doesn't need to be a journal article or a monograph. It could be a visualization of data, a blog post, a preprint, this talk that I'm giving. All of these things are artifacts that we could share and distribute and help build scholarly discourse. So we want to broaden out that idea of what is being published. And if we think about then, we can think of a flow of information along a river, and that what we have currently is something like a dam in which we take it at a very particular point and we do a lot to it. And certain water gets in, not all of it does. We have a thing also that we still can't see, but it's a structure that helps create power of some sort out of this flow of information. And so we were actually looking, so if we think of a dam, it also is an obstacle. And many things have come into play that actually rely on the dam of publishing, and we've talked about that, incentives, promotion and tenure, all the rest of it, in which we're very dependent on the structure that we have today. And all the visuals we can find about adjusting how you get the power out of moving water involve exploding dams, and we're a bit hesitant to explode the dam of publishing. But we were thinking about, are there other ways to think about how we might be able to dismantle it in some way or better it through change. And what we came to is we wanted to actually think about, and we'll bring the proposal of what we were called, what I have on, we'll have on the slide, of an unbundling of the services that publishers currently provide, or that the publishing process is, to enable innovation. So what we want is for everyone who needs access to scholarship to have it, and for authors to be able to have a lot more choice than they currently do, in order to define how the stuff that they create gets made discoverable. To encourage disruption in business models, and this is the thing I'll talk about in a moment, by unbundling the different services and unbundling the research process itself, and thinking about ways in which we can apply this capturing and making discoverable different aspects of research in a way that serves scholarship. And once we can do unbundling, and here's the picture I don't have, you could think of it like a smartphone, in which you actually can have individualized services and people innovating on a much smaller scale. We talked a lot about micro-innovation as well. So we can bring in new individuals and new organizations into this knowledge smartphone ecosystem. Right, so two more metaphors for you for which I don't have pictures. Okay, so we talked about unbundling publishing. Now we get into things that girls like me tend not to know about. Machines and transmission. I hear that's a transmission over there. What we think about when we talk about like looking at the different parts is we actually do need to think about how the output and what you're optimizing for. So if you're, in one case you might actually, the lightness of that object is really important. In another it might be the strength. And we have to actually know the impact of any change in the system in some way to actually understand what kinds of optimization help. And so we started thinking about, and I think in our paper we'll come and start thinking about systems thinking in terms of considering change. And so what we would like to see happen next, this is our kind of next steps, is really, if we think about unbundling services, we actually want to know what's already out there in terms of individualized things like peer review or production or registration or preservation. We actually took preservation off the list of what publishing is about and had an interesting conversation about intentionally ephemeral publishing as a new form. And we also think while there are certain things that might be better served by uncoupling and having individuals and other organizations play a role, there's also things that would only be possible by collaboration and federation. And so we offer up a couple of examples of things we all know about in the room, such as Crossref and ORCID, that really only are made possible by a bunch of different stakeholders coming together to think about how they might collaborate on those things. And so with that, I'd return to that foundational question that we were asking and add how can we actually provide the greatest benefit to a global society in a sustainable, feasible way to kind of go back into our question that we were starting with as a group of what is publishing, to ask what can publishing become. And with that, I will just list all the working group members, and thank you for your attention.